for the session today, and all other relevant stakeholders from government official, industry stakeholder, and expert from domain, and ladies and gentlemen. Well, before we start the formal proceeding, let me very quickly and briefly take you through the FICCI initiatives in the past. Uh, so FICCI engagement in the area of nutrition has been quite reactive, corrective, and active over the past couple of years. And at FICCI, we are putting best of our efforts not only to drive the agenda of nutrition in the country, but also to create awareness among the stakeholders on the different key aspects of nutrition like fortification, reformulation, etc. And with our exclusive FICCI Center for Nutrition Excellence, which we launched last year, we are working on different nutritional agendas to build awareness among the stakeholders and providing some very insightful science-based messaging. Coming back to the today's topic, which is more around the food ingredients, I wish to apprise you all that this is one of the key subsector wherein we are working very closely with our members in the past couple of years. We are strongly supporting the food ingredient sector on two fronts. One being addressing their concern on the with related government bodies and institutions, and secondly, we are also highlighting the critical role played by the ingredients in the food ecosystem because somewhere they lie somewhere between both Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of the Food Processing. So we're trying to bring the positive side of the ingredients, how they are, why they are important, and how they are adding a lot of value to the food ingredient ecosystem in totality. And in fact, this Future Nutrition webinar series is also the result of our close working with this sector, and member proposed to do something similar because much needed at this time, and people should know the role played by them. At the same time, we are also very thankful to all our partners who have come together and supported us in organizing this webinar series. Without their support, it wouldn't have been possible for FICCI to do so. And coming back to the today's session, we strongly believe that in today's session, the critical importance of nutrition and diet in our life is very, very important. And the time we are living in, the role of reformulation and the calorie reduction has a very major impetus in today's time because consumers are asking for products which are more healthier and more less calorie oriented, and the food processing industry also looking at the way by which virtue of which they can provide better food options with low calorie options. And with this, this was the main aim of doing this today's webinar. And without taking much of time, I will request Stephen, who is the policy director for Food Industry Asia, to take the decision forward. Stephen has been working very closely with the FIA in the past couple of years, and in fact, on the reformulation and the sweeteners, artificial sweetener, we have done very good 4 to 5 webinars, seminars last year in India, and they have been very successful. So we make out that there could not be anyone better than Stephen to moderate the session, who has a very good understanding and insight. And he, not only the Indian perspective, he understands the global perspective also, being representing the FIA. So Stephen, I will not take time in introducing all the speakers. I think that you can do at your end. So over to you, Stephen.
Okay, Abhinav, thank you very much for that kind introduction. And I think in the interest of time, let's get started on the topic. I think there are some slides of the different speakers. So perhaps if I can ask Gaurav, who's helping us with the IT stuff, when we have the different speakers presenting, perhaps you can show their slides. So let me start by saying that, as we all know, the global food system has undergone dramatic changes in recent years. Rapid urbanization, sedentary lifestyles, higher incomes are among some of the range of other factors that have resulted in a shift towards less healthy dietary habits. Consumers today are also placing greater value on convenience and are less likely to prepare meals with fresh ingredients at home as a result. So they rely largely on prepackaged foods ordered out or eating out. And all these combined factors have had an impact on consumers' nutrition and health. So besides being home to more than half of the world's undernourished people, Asia is also becoming or also seeing an increase in the prevalence of overweight and obesity. So given the mounting evidence that poor dietary habits are among the factors tied to health problems, the food and beverage industry has been responding in a proactive manner in recognition of the role it plays in advancing the region's health agenda. As highlighted in a series of reformulation studies conducted by ITD and supported by Food Industry Asia, most food and beverage companies across India, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia have begun reformulating their products or plan to do so. In fact, ITD has identified that close to 80% of companies across these markets have either completed or have commenced their reformulation efforts. Now, in the past, reformulation meant removing, reducing, or replacing key ingredients. But now, technological advancements have allowed companies to look beyond that and make various simultaneous changes to a product's recipe and composition of ingredients. We are also seeing that consumers are becoming increasingly more and more health conscious across Asia, with the majority of these across the surveyed markets actively trying to improve their consumption habits. That said, the Asia Reformulation Landscape Report found that a key challenge for the food industry is the ability to create healthier foods while still retaining the original flavor consumers are accustomed to. Consumers across all the markets studied remain unwilling to compromise on taste for health benefits, despite nearly 8 out of 10 expressing that they are open to reformulated products. Now, the FIA study found that 92% of Indian consumers were keen or interested in maintaining a healthy diet. But out of that 92%, only 37% said they maintain a healthy diet all of the time. So in India, as across the rest of Asia, the reduction of sugar was one of the top priorities for consumers, with the exception of China, where salt reduction is critical. When it comes to reformulation, 83% of Indian consumers were happy for their food to be reformulated to make it healthier, with the caveat that taste needs to be maintained. So in India, quality, taste, and the clear display of nutritional information were the most important criteria for consumers when choosing what they eat or drink. Hence, companies carrying out reformulation activities in India need to focus on improving the nutrition profile of their products while maintaining its taste and flavor profiles if they are to ensure consumer acceptability. Now, sugar, for instance, is one of the biggest dietary concerns for consumers in India. Consumers in all the country studies most often look out for information related to sugar content when they are checking the product's label. Beyond influencing taste, we know that sugar plays a key role in improving texture and preservation. And this has spurred a demand for substitutes that impart sweetness with significantly fewer or no calories, which has in turn pushed the food and beverage industry to develop a wide range of reduced, low, or non-added sugar product variants. The result of such reformulation efforts is the introduction of low non-calorie sweeteners such as stevia, sucralose, and a few others, which can support the reduction of calories and sugar in one's diet without affecting the taste profile. As it becomes increasingly common in mainstream products and more accessible to consumers, they are less likely to see cost as a barrier to healthy eating, and nearly 72% of Indian consumers were acceptable to the use of low non-calorie sweeteners as a sugar substitute. What does this all mean for the food and beverage industry? To find out more, we have a great panel of experts from across the industry, academia, and the public sector to discuss this very topic. We have Dr. Rebecca Lopez Garcia, the toxicology and regulations expert for Loga International Food Science Consulting, Dr. Shashank R. Joshi, consultant endocrinologist at Lilavati and Bhatia Hospitals and the Joshi Clinic. We have Mr. Damien Pierre-Lesseau, Head of Technical Development for Food at Rocket Asia Pacific Private Limited. We have my good friend, Mr. Govindarajan Raghavan, who is the Head of Research and Development at Zydus Wellness Limited. Ms. Isha Kaka, the sales leader, Beverages and Better Nutrition at South Asia DuPont Nutrition and Biosciences. And finally, Ms. Millie Bhattacharya, who is the Senior Manager, Scientific Nutrition and Regulatory Affairs at Coca-Cola India Private Limited. So how we will run this session for about the next 45 minutes or so is that we will give each panelist 3 to 5 minutes to make some introductory statements based on the topic of the webinar. Following this introductory statement, which we will try and limit to 3 to 5 minutes, and I will come in if you tend to go more than 5 minutes, I have a series of questions that I intend to ask the panelists prior to Abhinav and the FICCI team opening it out for the audience. So without much further ado then, let's get started. And I'm going to now hand it over to Dr. Rebecca Lopez Garcia. So over to you, Rebecca.
Thank you very much for the invitation to talk about sweetness from the other side of the world. I think we share a lot of the concerns that are shared around Asia and a lot of the same health challenges. So thank you very much for the invitation to talk about human beings. These flavors are related to nourishment, pleasure, and even love. Think about it. She was with bread. So flavor is very important, not only at meal times, but as an intrinsic part of our culture. Primitive humans learned that sweet flavors, the food was probably safe and nutritious. However, there is, in fact, the potential of having too much of a really good thing. Nowadays, we're consuming too much sugar. The World Health Organization has established that we should not be consuming more than 10% of our daily calories from sugars, ideally less than 5%. However, in many foods, sugar plays important technological functions beyond sweetness. Sugars are important for food preservation, inhibition of harmful microorganisms, texture, and other functionalities. And of course, product acceptability is key for any kind of reformulation. Some individuals find it really hard to completely nature. Human milk is really sweet, and that entices the baby to consume milk and stay alive, and it's key for survival. Low-calorie sweeteners can be a tool to metabolic impact of sugars. However, it is important to understand that low-caloric sweeteners are food additives, and as such, they only provide technological function. In this case, sweetness. As food additives, these compounds are thoroughly evaluated to ensure that it is safe to consume them. Food additives by itself cannot and will not provide any health benefit. Organization of the United Nations and the World Health Organization Joint Expert Committee for Food Additives and Contaminants, Authority, the United States Food and Drug Administration, among other independent international agencies, evaluate these compounds before approval. So before these compounds come to the marketplace, they have been thoroughly evaluated, sometimes 20 years, to be able to get a product out into the market. These compounds must show no adverse health effect, and this is very important. The products, regardless of their origin, natural or artificial or synthetic or transformed, or they do not pose any adverse health effect at the level that are being used, taking into account that the most vulnerable populations of group, which means children, pregnant women, and other high-risk groups such as diabetic patients. However, these compounds also show no benefit. The potential health benefits can only be obtained with sugar substitution and the transition to a healthier diet and lifestyle.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Rebecca. I think you made some very important points about, sugar playing an important role, but it goes back to everything in moderation. Too much sugar is obviously not a good thing. I think you spoke about the importance role that low non-calorie sweeteners can play in providing sweetness, and also a topic that I want to come back to you with around the safety of sweetness. So after we have the rest of the panelists speak, I'm going to come back to you specifically on the topic of the safety around low non-calorie sweeteners, because it is a topic that is that raises a lot of concern here in Asia. So thank you for that. We will now move on to our next speaker, Dr. Shashank R. Joshi. So Dr. Joshi, over to you.
Am I audible?
Yes, very clear.
Yeah. So thank you for the opportunity, Stephen, and from Fiki. I think my previous speaker has alluded to that we are having a huge problem of non-communicable diseases on planet Earth. I also wear the hat of International Diabetes Federation, and I represent and I'm the chair of the Southeast Asia chapter. And we clearly know beyond reasonable doubt that India has 80 million diabetics. We are the second largest country on planet Earth with diabetes. The whole South Asia and the Asian region is exploding with diabetes. Every 7 seconds, a diabetic on planet Earth is dying. And this is the World Diabetes Week. You know that 14th of November is the World Diabetes Day. Unfortunately, you need to reduce calories. It is not just about sugar all the time. It is about carb control, calorie control, portion control, and these three things are very difficult to do. Unfortunately, food industry has promoted excess eating, and I think they need to be more responsive in their advertorials on responsive eating, where you promote less eating. Taste is important, but that doesn't mean that taste mimics, and sweeteners need to generate evidence, as my previous speaker said, on safety. The challenge with sweeteners from an endocrine standpoint is that they may promote some gut microbiota and might actually promote weight gain. And that's a realistic challenge because the data has to support that it does not cause weight gain by being a mimic in the brain. And that's the challenge as medical doctors. I'm an odd person out in this audience of regulators and food technologists and all you scientists. I'm also a scientist, but I'm a medical scientist and I treat patients. And I'm committed to my people living with diabetes. And in them, people living with diabetes, definitely sweeteners have a role. But you know that we need to recognize that they cannot promote weight gain and they cannot alter the gut microbiota. So that's the concern. Having said that, I think food industry in general has become more responsible in the last decade. I see a change happening. I also see that they are trying to repurpose or reformulate their formulations to reduce calories. They are trying to be more transparent in nutritional labeling. At least the consumer is able to delineate what he's eating. And the food labeling and the various labels are trying to do that. You know that WHO has recognized that sugar was the next tobacco. And we also need to know that sugar consumption does and can be detrimental because it's a simple sugar. But you can do a lot of innovation in the food space and in the carbohydrate space. We need a lot of resistant starches. We need to have long-acting or slowly digested carbs. You can design systems in the carbohydrate world where there can be a delay in gastric emptying. There can be delay in the incretin axis. They can increase the gut peptides. They can actually cause resolution of diabetes. A lot of innovations in the food space can lead to some very innovative solutions. Sweetener was just cutting the calories out. The challenge with sweeteners has some good data also. So I will not be just saying that sweeteners are bad. Sweeteners definitely reduce dental caries. The data on dental caries is very, very robust, and dental caries is the most common problem on planet Earth. But in the obesity space, unfortunately, sweeteners have not stood the test of time. So generating good evidence from our region is the need of the hour. Having local regional solutions in the food space for that geography is very crucial. And I'm happy that, Stephen, you are leading the front from Asia. And I'm happy that the countries you mentioned, unfortunately, are all hotspots for diabetes, whether it is India, whether it is China. And we don't want to be the hotspots for diabetes. We want to be the care spots for diabetes. We want to reverse this trend. And we are all here committed to reduce that. And we need to partner with each one of you here to help us to elevate the pre-diabetes space. My problem is people who have diabetes may still do okay under medical supervision and care. We want to have them no complications. But people who are in the pre-diabetes space, if they eat too much, then we have a challenge and we need to mitigate that. And we need solutions for pre-disease. We need solutions on normal, healthy living population. And I think it is the children and the adolescents whose mind is controlled by a lot of consumer industry. If you have tasty and responsive eating habits inculcated through the mechanisms and the various organizations you represent, I think you will be serving the world. And therefore, as I said, you need to do a green eating movement. Just like we are very green in every way, I think we need to be green in this space too. And I think that's very, very crucial and important. So my only plea to all of you here who are all in the technological domain, in the food domain, in the industry domain, is be responsive. Tomorrow it could be your child. Tomorrow it could be your parent who might have diabetes, who might have a heart disease, who might have a kidney disease, who may need dialysis, bypass, angioplasty. We need to save the world. And we can't afford to lose every 7 seconds a diabetic. We can't afford to lose every 5 minutes, 5 seconds, a person with heart attacks. And therefore my plea is that keep innovating. I congratulate all of you as scientists that you are doing this repurposing and the redesigning and reformulation of various food formulations. Taste is very crucial, but at the same time, healthy eating is equally important. And don't compromise under the name of taste, food behavior. Don't try to mimic the hypothalamus and at the same time try to gain weight. So I think that's equally important. Stephen made a passing remark that China salt is important, India also salt is important. India is also the stroke capital of the world. India is also the heart disease capital of the world and the hypertension capital of the world. We published 10 years back the site study, screening for twin epidemic of hypertension and diabetes. And we found out that from the 8 states of India, 16,000 population, which we published in 2011, we found that 30% of India has hypertension. And it is all linked to salt. So salt is equally crucial. It is not just sugar. In fact, sugar has been overhyped in India. Salt has been underhyped in India. And that is the truth. Because Indians are sweet people. They love their sweets. They love their festivities. But making these sweets healthier, low calorie, is going to be the order of the day. Thank you for the opportunity. And I'll be happy to answer any questions in the space of endocrinology, diet, nutrition, and science. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Joshi, for those very insightful remarks. And you made some very important remarks about reducing calories, reducing carbs, and also looking at portion size. And the fact that India is, fast becoming the diabetes capital of the world, and the rest of South Asia going along with it as well. I do have some questions for you on that topic. And it's also very clear that we must be mindful that some of these habits are also cultural. I haven't had the pleasure of being in India since February when I was in Hyderabad, but I have to say I did enjoy some gulab jamun, which is one of my favorites every time I come to India. And I know it's not good for me, but I suppose you can spend 30 minutes in the gym after your gulab jamun, and that might do you some good. So I'll come back to you with those questions. Let's move on then to Damien Pierre. DP, can I ask you to give your introductory remarks? Okay, have we got Damien Pierre from Rocket on the line?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry. Thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Dr. Joshi. You raised the bar on the challenges. They are very high. Indeed, there is a lot of, in terms of when you talked about sugar management on the sensory part, because we all know that consumers are basically not ready to compromise on taste. But also sugar is, in a good way or in a bad way, a very affordable bulking agent. used in many reformulation, and this is making the things a little bit tricky. Thanks to the pressure of the government, mostly, this is where it started, many companies have started reformulating. We estimate at Rocket that 50% of the reformulation is what we call made silent, without advertising on the front pack. But for the ones which are claimed, advertised on front pack, there have been a quite increase in India between 2018 to 2019, plus 30%. And they reached last year, if we take the total product launch in the food, packaged food, reduced sugar or no sugar, I will say, reach 8% of the total product launch. So who knows what's going to happen in 2020? What is true, I think we gain years because consumer, and including myself, I will say, start to realize that health is not a given. Health is important thanks to this pandemic, I will say. And there are things we cannot control, but there are things we can control. And how do we eat? The way we eat, there are small things then we can control. So awareness definitely rising up. We'll see how it's coming into the coming years, if it's going to sustain or not. But it's going up. The tricky point is consumers are not really refusing pricing up where there is product less. So when you advertise less sugar, no sugar, it seems at a bit negative. So they might think that we need to move from this less sugar to the next things. What are the positive claims? What are the positive benefits? Then we can emphasize. If I take the example, the Joshi's talk about the whole health, the move we had in the last 10, 20 years on non-sugar confectionery, chewing gum and mint, not only was advertising sugar-free, but mostly advertising oral health. They're advertising positive things. And so consumer could afford or could spend a bit more on those positive. Question is, how can we do the same in the bakery, in the rest of the confectionery? Beverage has been done most of it. And this is where moving from the less part to the positive overall nutrition. And that one can be used. You can replace partially, not totally, but you could replace partially the sugar with some fiber, for example, who can have an impact on the microbiota, or with protein. So this is the big challenge. Less part of the nutrition and the price benefit, which are keeping, of course, affordable. And back to you, Stephen.
Great. Thank you very much for that, DP. I think a very important point that you raised is around reformulation by stealth. So when we talk about reformulation, and even with the studies that we have done at Food Industry Asia, it's based on the evidence that we've been able to gather. But as you quite rightly point out, a lot of companies are reformulating by stealth. They are doing this as an ongoing practice. And I think you also raised a very important point about talking about the positive benefits of reformulation, not the fact that the product is less sugar, no sugar, what have you. What are the benefits of this product? What are the positive benefits of a product that has been reformulated? So it's something that, is food for thought, certainly. So let's move on then to Mr. Govindarajan Raghavan from Zydus. So over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Good morning, everyone. It's always tough to speak after a couple of speakers to start with. Dr. Joshi rightly said that, how much of non-communicable diseases have been prevalent in India. In fact, there was a survey by the National Nutrition Monitoring Bureau in India in 2016-17, which said that around 22% men and 22% women had high cholesterol levels, while overall prevalence of hypertension was around 38% in men and 29% in women. So it's not only about diabetes, obesity, but also about hypertension being a big concern here. And as Dr. Rebecca said, also that WHO putting a recommendation on 5% and 10% of sugar. And there's, I think, a lot of awareness today from an industry perspective and also from the consumer perspective on calorie reduction per se, not only about sugar reduction, but also the overall calorie reduction. And to a large extent, calorie reduction is also been linked to the sugar reduction as one of the major factors that contributes to the calories or the weight increase. And today, we are all in that pandemic of working from home. A lot of physical activity has reduced to a great extent. Children have not gone down to play. Gone are the days when we used to play for 2-3 hours in the evening after the school. Today, we are all confined to our work and sitting in front of the laptop, not going to the labs, not going to the office. So all these have increased the importance of or relevance of calorie reduction. And when we look at what are the options available in the industry for calorie reduction, there's a huge amount of options available. And if you see India today, next week we have the Diwali, the festive season coming in, a lot of sweets. Gifting a sweet is actually considered to be one of the best things that you can do. So to replace is not easy. It's not going to be easy. But what are the options available? If I look at the options available, you can see that there are tabletop sweeteners that are available in pellets or sachets that you can replace. A simple replacement in a tea or a coffee or a beverage that you drink. 20 odd calories per spoon. You typically in India, in the western state where I live in, they take two teaspoons in a cup of coffee or a tea. Now you can directly reduce some 40 odd calories in a cup simply by reducing the sugar intake there. There are options available. Now, if you go to yesterday I was just walking down the lane to buy some sweets for Diwali, and you can see even a small shop down the lane has options or, a couple of options for sugar-free delights, sugar-free sweets. There are sugar-free chocolates, there are sugar-free cookies, no added sugar cookies. As DP rightly mentioned, replacing sugar in cookies, replace it with fiber, replace it with FOS. A lot of these options are available to replace sugar. And we have, in terms of sugar substitutes also, you have a lot of options available. Like you said, Steven, natural stevia available to a sucralose that mimics the taste of the sugar. So these low-calorie sweeteners, in replacing the sugar, not only give you a benefit of replacing sweetness, but also removes the empty calories. As formulators, we have been working on trying to remove the empty calories as well from the products. Not only reducing the sugar or maintaining the sensorials of sweetness, but also taking care that we don't increase the calories. As responsible companies, we have started putting those NFTs in a lot of these packs, and these very clearly highlight the reduction of sugar. Not only sugar, but also we have offerings in terms of low fat, in terms of low salt, moving from sugar to resistant starches, as Dr. Joshi said, that those are the things, and also to more increased fiber. I think today, if you see from a food industry perspective, we have plenty of options available, from a natural stevia to a more sucralose or an aspartame, or a lot of options available, and a lot of offerings available in the market as well, from the food industry, from the organized sector, as well as unorganized sector also. There's a lot of awareness, and that's where I think the people are moving towards calorie reduction per se. There's responsible eating, like Dr. Joshi said, portion. A lot of people have started reducing the portion, and I think a lot of awareness of number of times you eat has also increased. So I think there's awareness, there is options available, and it's for us to push towards that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Govi, that was very, very helpful. I think you brought up a very important point which is right for the times. It's around what's happening with COVID-19, with a lot of people actually being stuck in the homes. They can't go out. They're actually ordering food out. So even that little walk that you might have done to the corner store at the top of your street to buy the food that you're going to consume is not happening anymore. You're getting it delivered to your house. So we're actually leading far more sedentary lifestyles, or perhaps have led far more sedentary lifestyles in this past 8 months than we have in the past. So it's actually adding to the problem rather than solving the problem. And I think, very clearly what you mentioned about cultural habits. I mean, Diwali is a critical festival, a very important festival in India, and you can't just overnight change habits, cultural habits that have been there for over 1,000 years. What I was very enlightened, though, was when I was in Bangalore last year, running a workshop on sweeteners, when I met some of the small and medium scale companies working in this particular industry that you talked about around sweets. A lot of them were actually making their sweet products with sweeteners as a differentiator, so that they could actually sell these sweets to people with diabetes. So I think that even within the small and medium scale sector in India, there's an awareness of the need for reduced sugar. So I think that's very important. I'll come back to you with some questions, but we have got two more panelists to go. So let me start very quickly and hand it over to Isha from DuPont. Isha, over to you.
Thank you so much, Stephen. And, on this, I just want to add Dr. Joshi about how lifestyles like diabetes are absolutely exploding in India, including cardiovascular diseases as well. However, just to add to another statistic perhaps we haven't heard yet, according to a recent study by Ipsos and Mintel, while 46% of Indians said that leading a healthier lifestyle was their top goal, only about 22% Indians are actually proactively trying to reduce the amount of sugar in their diets. This percentage goes up a little bit to 29% in the 55 plus population, but most of that population also says that, look, I'm only doing it because my doctor asked me to. So while there's definitely a lot of awareness that yes, sugar adds to calories, these calories are giving me diseases like diabetes and cardiovascular diseases, how many consumers are really proactively trying to make an effort to reduce the amount of sugar in their diet? We just heard about, the options of having low-calorie sweets available for Diwali and festivals. However, we hear from a lot of the companies that make these sweets that while they have the option available in their shops, nobody is buying them. I mean, most of the consumers are still buying your full sugar sweets. They don't want to go for the lower calorie option. We have a lot of diabetics saying that, look, I want to try and eat a smaller portion of a full sugar product, but I don't want to eat a lower sweetener product. So, there's a lot of challenge also around educating consumers, making them aware that, look, products which have a sugar alternate will taste as good because that's what we're trying to do. So right now, consumers have that perception that is perhaps not the case. So I think there is definitely a lot of work also to be done on increasing consumer awareness that, look, while it's in your head that you need to proactively start taking better care of your health, make important steps. Start reading, the sugar content in the products that you buy. Right now, a very small percentage of consumers are actually doing that, and with FSSAI restrictions becoming stronger, we'll start to see a lot of companies mentioning the amount of sugar on the front of packs. And I think that will play a huge role in really expanding consumer awareness and making them more aware that, look, okay, fine, this is something that I need to pay attention to because this is being called out. The sugar content of a product is being called out. Also, there may be consumers who say that, look, I exercise regularly. Why do I need to reduce the amount of sugar in my diet? I read a recent article published by the Harvard Medical School wherein they followed a 15-year study which said that the chances of a person actually dying from cardiovascular disease increases in tandem with the amount of sugar in their diet. It doesn't matter what age, sex, level of physical activity or weight of the person is. The more sugar you take, the more chances that you get the cardiovascular disease, and of course, the more chances that you die from it. So definitely a lot of work to be done in this space. We heard from some of the other panelists that certain companies are at the forefront of making or launching such products in the market. We have the next speaker coming after me from Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola has been, and some other beverage companies have been, right at the forefront of launching reduced sugar or sugar alternate products to really help consumers curb their sugar intake. So definitely a lot of work is happening by a lot of companies. We are working with a lot of companies to help them reformulate their products. But at the same time, I believe there's still a lot to do in raising consumer awareness. Thank you.
Thank you, Ishan. I think that some of the data you mentioned about consumers, about trying to reduce sugar, etc., very much is aligned with the studies that we have done across Asia as well. where there is a strong awareness amongst consumers about the importance of reducing sugar in their diet and overall having a healthy diet. But actually, when it comes to actual action, so I know my diet is not as healthy as it could be or should be, but eating healthy all the time, the gap between eating healthy all the time is it's very wide. So people are not putting their awareness into action, if you like. So that I think is something that is very important to take into consideration. So before we actually go finally into a round of questions from the panelists, I'd like to ask Millie from Coca-Cola to make her introductory remarks. Millie, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen, and good morning to everybody. First of all, a huge thanks to the organizers, Vicky and FIA, for having this discussion, which is very, very important. My deepest respect to all the experts and the panelists, and a very, very warm welcome to all the viewers, my industry friends, mentors, and colleagues. As I was saying, that this is indeed a very important topic to discuss about the reformulation, and this has assumed a lot of importance in the current time when the world is actually grappling with the COVID pandemic, because consumers' mind, not only on a global scale but also in India, is immensely impacted by in view of the healthy diet and lifestyle that they would like to embrace to keep them healthy. And we have seen in the last several years, governments, institutions, scientific organizations have reinforced the importance of healthy diet to tackle obesity, to tackle various incidences of non-communicable diseases. And one of the facets of this healthy diet is to reduce the consumption of excess salt, fat, and sugar. And also, being in India, any reformulation journey is incomplete without the mention of a great initiative by our Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, by their iconic Eat Right India movement, which has really given a huge encouragement, a huge enablement to the entire initiatives of having a lot of reformulated products in the country. And if we look at as Stephen and many of the panelists are saying, a journey of reformulation is really a gradual journey with respect to reducing, be it salt, be it sugar, or be it fat. And this is very aptly represented by the iconic slogan of FSSAI saying, Aaj se thoda kam, which means, let's aim for little less from today. In this journey, several companies and most of the companies are in this reformulation initiatives, launching a range of products which are in various calorie ranges, starting from no calorie to reduced calorie to lower calorie options. And coming from Coca-Cola India also, I can vouch for it that sugar reduction in various categories of beverage offerings is one of the prime strategy that we are working on. On a annual basis in 2019, by several reformulation initiatives, we have been able to reduce around 350,000 tons of added sugar globally through more than 200 reformulated products. And so is the journey for many, many food companies which are in India and many parts of the globe. So when it comes to reformulation pertaining to sugar reduction, we are in fact very fortunate to science and technology, because there are sugar substitutes and alternatives which are readily available, which can really, which can be used in various combinations to create a very palatable profile in various formats of food and beverage by reducing calories. So when coming to the topic of high intensity sweeteners or low and no calorie sweeteners, as we know, these are used in very minuscule quantities to impart the sweetness, and they don't contribute significantly to any amount of calories. And if I state an example, as Rebecca also alluded, Dr. Rebecca also alluded to, that these are one of the most researched food additives across the world, researched by several scientific organizations, be it Joint Expert Committee on Food Additives, a WHO FAO body, European Food Safety Authority, and these have been assessed and evaluated not only once, but multiple times across several years, looking at the totality of scientific evidence. So if I state an example, sweetener like S-sulfam potassium has been evaluated almost 7 times, a couple of times by JECFA, and very recently in 2016 by EPSA. So all these really attests to the safety and the toxicological evidences which are already established that these are safe to be consumed within their acceptable daily intake for all population groups. And these are actually used in very minute amount. Just a small example, if I state for a typical ready-to-serve juice drink, sweeteners are typically used in proportion of milligrams per liter, which is like, if I say it's normally used maybe in 150 milligrams per liter, which translates into using only 30 milligram of it in a typical serving of 200 ml. So if you really see the amount of acceptable daily intake it has, it will really need about 30 to 50 servings of those products to be consumed by an individual to reach that acceptable daily intake. So that's very important, the safety and the evidence which is already there. And I would agree a lot with a lot of the comments from the panelists that not only the reformulation, the acceptance of those reformulated products by the consumers is of utmost importance. And in that field, we all have a key role to play. It's really a multi-stakeholder approach with respect to educating, communicating, and informing the consumers on the right science, right information, right guidance on the healthy eating, healthy lifestyle, portion control. So it's really a holistic effort by multiple stakeholders. And the importance of an enabling regulatory regime is also very important. There should be an allowance of several food additives, which are very important tools to actually deliver on those innovations. So yes, these are my initial comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Billy. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so in the interest of time, I'm going to move on straight to some of the questions with the panelists, and then I think Abhinav has already informed you, members of the audience, that if you have any questions, please put them up in the chat, and they will then be passed on to me. So let me start, first of all, with our first panelist, Dr. Rebecca. And Rebecca, I'd like to ask you, if we take sugar, and Millie just mentioned this as well, the safety of alternatives to sugar, so low non-calorie sweeteners, are often challenged by governments and regulators, including the restriction of their usage and warning labels. And India is no exception to that, where there are warning labels on certain categories of sweeteners. Now, can you explain, Rebecca, why science-based evidence is needed to justify the safety profile of sweeteners and the role that they can play to reduce sugar intake to help people transition to a healthier lifestyle?
Sure.
Rebecca?
Yes. In the market, they have already undergone several assessments on their safety. And if they're in the market in a particular, has taken all of those independent assessments in the country, plus the exposure within the country. So the regulatory bodies at the national level take a look at the diet and how that exposure can change between different countries. So that is why in different countries you will have different limits for certain products. For some countries that have a high intake of soda, limits may be lower to consider that that higher intake. With that being said, the safety is not really challenged by the regulatory authorities, but there's a lot of on what is the background of the safety assessment of these compounds. Some of these compounds have warning labels, such as aspartame, because aspartame contains phenylalanine, and there's a certain group of individuals that have to limit their intake of phenylalanine. We must remember that it is an essential amino acid. So the rest of the population that's not diagnosed with this illness does not have any relation to this warning. However, there are certain parts of the population that can control their intake of this amino acid within the diet. Now, we talk a lot about, and microbiota was mentioned, and microbiota is the topic that is on the table now. With COVID-19, we know that some probiotics play a very important role in modulation of the immune function. There's a lot to be learned, and microbiota is a very new field, and we will still keep on learning. However, if you take a look at the effect of low-calorie sweeteners on microbiota, one has to be really careful about reading some of these studies, because most of the headlines say sweeteners, and there's no such thing. These are very independent molecules. They are absolutely different from a chemical, from a physical chemical, from a physiological standpoint. So, potential adverse effect, we need to talk compound by compound. So some of the studies have a headline that says sweeteners, and in reality, they only studied saccharin. Now, if you really look deeply into some of these studies, you will see that in the additional information, the mice that were used to study these compounds, they were exposed to such high levels above the acceptable daily intake that the diet tasted horrible. So they stopped eating. They stopped eating up to 50% of the diet. So what my point here is that as a whole. So sweeteners play a very small important or a very small part in proportion to the whole diet. We really need to take into account consumption of fresh fruits and vegetables. And if we look at some of these countries where we have overweight and obesity, we can see that children are not even close to meeting the requirements of fresh fruits and vegetables. They don't even eat one serving out of the 5 recommended servings. And we know that polyphenols present in these fresh fruits and vegetables play a very important prebiotic effect. Nobody reaches the fiber recommended. We have to take a holistic approach. And I know it's a topic, or microbiota is a topic that we need to observe and we need to study, but it is in general. We do know the impact on microbiota. So what are sweeteners? They're just tools. They're tools to transition people to better eating. They're tools to help people, like diabetic patients, stay within their diet. They help people maintain a lifestyle, not stay in a diet for a few weeks and then just leave it. They really are useful tools, and they are safe. They are safe if they are used within the acceptable daily intake as part of a healthy diet and lifestyle.
Thank you very much, Rebecca, for that very detailed answer. I'm going to now turn to Dr. Joshi once again, and I'm going to go back to you, Dr. Joshi, on the question you raised around diabetes. So as you quite rightly mentioned, India has one of the highest rates of type 2 diabetes in the world. What has driven this epidemic? And what is your view on studies that would argue that South Asians have a genetic disposition towards type 2 diabetes because of their diet? Over to you, Dr. Joshi.
So I think India is not the diabetes capital of the world, and we want to be the diabetes care capital of the world. But you're right, that Asian Indians, which migrated from tribes to villages to towns, became low on their physical activity and non-energy activity thermogenesis. So the sedentary Indian is the prime reason for driving this and propelling this pandemic. The second challenge which we have is the whole issue of thin fat Indian, which means we have in our body fat a personal fat threshold. And it is not just the carb, but the carb and fat being excess. We published in British Medical Journal the START study, in which we found the whole of India eats excess of carbs, excess of fat, and too little protein. And we have a lesser muscle mass. So basically, that has propelled it. See, remember, type 2 diabetes is a polygenic disease. The monogenic variants of type 2 diabetes are very rare. So it's not really genetic from that standpoint, but it's familial because the food habits are familial. India is an agrarian country. It is a fasting and feasting country. So obviously, when they were agrarian Indians who are physically active in the agricultural fields, they never had diabetes and they needed those high carb diets, high fat diets for energy as a source. But in the last 200 years, we saw a huge switch. We have become a seated India. We have become a software capital of the world. We have become very, very sedentary. And our diet pattern has more or less remained the same. And because of this nutritional transition, we have developed an explosion of type 2 diabetes. I think that is the prime driving force, that it is lack of physical activity compounded with excess of carbs and fats with very less protein, which is driving the pandemic in India. We have the thin fat Indian phenotype. Genomics do play a role, but that's not as compelling as the lifestyle changes which are there. Also, we have a huge component of other lifestyle issues like addictions like tobacco, the smoking, which has gone up, lack of sleep, which has gone up, the chronobiology of eating, the food habits which have come in. So I think wrong food habits are just one part of the puzzle. I would just like to make a small little counter to my previous colleague on the sweetener microbiota bit. I think the saccharine story is far from over. The regular sweeteners, including sucralose, including stevia, have some very elegant science publications in elegant journals like Nature and Science, which have shown in human gut microbiota that they promote weight gain. And these are not experimental animal studies. And now there are more than 160 publications which document that in the human gut microbiome, the sweeteners, and each sweetener, I can go sweetener by sweetener, study by study, and I can actually give you a 3-hour presentation how each of these sweeteners can promote weight gain. So I don't think we should argue there. I think what we need to do is generate some good quality science. Sweeteners have their role, they cut their calories, but their evidence base on the weight gain part has been very poor, very tardy, and the scientists across the world have published in some high impact journals like Nature and Science actually disproving that fact. And the saccharine and mice story is over a long time back. Now we are talking of human beings. Human beings are not mice. And that saccharine mice study is now virtually in the dustbin. So I would not put too much to that. Having said that, I think we are all committed here. I'm very happy that you people are very committed for responsive eating, reformulating your products, making them tasty and healthy both. I think we should continue that. But I think eat less, walk more. So, my prevention mantra for type 2 diabetes is very simple. Eat less, eat on time, eat the right food. Even if it is a packaged food, but made healthy, take it. Okay, but eat slowly, eat on time, eat the right food, and try to control your portion. Don't eat too much. That's very important. But just eating food is not sufficient. Physical activity has gone down. You see, our non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which was 2000 plus, has gone down to only now 300, 400. We have become seated. We are not even fidgety. At least, I can see Stephen nodding his head. He's fidgety. He's spending some energies when he's sitting on a webinar. But I don't know about others. So we need to be fidgety. We need to spend more energy. And it's equally important that we don't get stressed out. I'm not here to generate stress. I'm here to do good science. So we need to smile. I'm happy that Stephen is smiling. And everybody needs to smile because we need to be stress-free. Stress generates negative chemicals far more than any sweetener. And that's important to recognize. Sweet gives you pleasure, but that pleasure is as bad because it stimulates the mu receptors and it could sometimes be mimicked by sweeteners. So I think that sweet taste is needed by our body, but too much of it might be harmful. And beyond that, we need to have good sleep. 8 hours of sleep is equally important to have and change the diabetes pandemic. And the last point which I want to make is we are in a digitalized world today. And to reverse chronic diseases, we also all need to do a digital detox. Please, all of you all will get wedded with a syndrome called WhatsApp Vision Syndrome. I'm researching on that. And please do a digital detox every day for 2 days. But I think we need to have a healthy world and we need to have a chronic disease-free world. And I think all of you all are contributing. You all are our partners in the science to make better foods so that the world is a better place to live. And I think the IDF has a goal. This year's theme is the nurse. But I'm telling you that nurse actually is just a epicenter because we are celebrating next year the centenary of insulin discovery. But you all from the food industry can make a change in human behavior. And human behavior is a very difficult proposition. You all understand it best because your marketing gurus, they know how to influence that human behavior and influence communications. So obviously, you all can make a change with good science, good products, which are healthy and tasty. So that's all I have to say. I hope that I am not sounding cynical, but probably I am the negative person in the group, but I want to be positive. I want to spread the positive messaging that eat less and walk more is all you need to change the chronic disease numbers across the world, which are very abysmal. And in COVID times, it's going to be bigger. You know, COVID is not going to be the main challenge. It is a tsunami after COVID of the non-communicable diseases because people have sat at home, sat in front of their computer screens or TV screens or telephone screens and just have eaten food from outside and too much of food. And that will lead to a bigger explosion of diabetes, hypertension, heart disease. And that's my worry and concern. So please, each one of you all, you are influencers in the world. Please influence people around your little ecosystem so that you can be the change agents. And we are all here to celebrate Diwali. I wish everybody a happy Diwali. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Joshi, for that very valuable points. I think you're absolutely right. We all appreciate and acknowledge the fact that obesity and NCDs are multifactorial diseases. It's not one factor that causes it. But as you quite rightly point out, we also have to start looking at a whole range of other factors. And I think, we don't have much time. We only have about 25 minutes. But if we had time, first of all, I would have asked everybody to get up and shake your legs a little bit, because I'm sure we've now been sitting on this. Well, I certainly have been sitting in front of my computer screen for the last 2 hours. Maybe some of you not as much, but it's something to be mindful. So perhaps after this session, I challenge all of you to take a 15-minute walk, have a glass of water and take a 15-minute walk. It'll do you good. And Dr. Joshi will be very happy if you all do that as well. So DP, I'm going to come to you now because we want to try and get through this session quite quickly. You are a company that provides solutions, and Dr. Joshi has already thrown a challenge to industry. So I want to ask you, how does Rocket work with its customers? How do you collaborate with your customers to support reformulation efforts in India? And I also want to ask you, should governments consider incentivizing reformulation? So over to you, DP.
Thank you, Stephen. I think there is no one solution for everything. Dr. Joshi say a bit versatile. We need to have a portion a little bit smaller, eating a little bit healthier, exercise a bit more. So there is no one formulation for all. It's all depend on the case, and a small amount of a lot of things are good. A high amount or a lot of small things are pretty bad. So it's not one fit all. You can have we do provide polyols to formulate on sugar free. We do provide some fibers to replace the bulking part of the sugar. Now coming to the sale of protein, which are either plant-based that we provide or other. You have, for example, some chocolate maker who has reduced the sugar by putting more milk into it. So there's a lot of things possible. And every time it's tailor-made when we discuss to our customer and they formulate for their consumer. On the second question you ask, Yeah, government now try to put some pressure on the industry to reduce by doing some taxes. It did have some effect. Some place, in other place, not much, except giving more taxes to government. I just noticed one thing which is starting to be pretty big in Europe, which is called Nutri-Score. So starting in some countries when you have the same as a traffic light, A, B, C, D, and so consumer start to tackle their own, being their own decision maker, and I think more transparent into the label will allow consumer to make the right choices. I do believe with what I said previously, with the pandemic we have now, consumer awareness we gain some years, and that will put pressure to us, all of us in the food industry, to crack the challenge of reformulating at a good taste and not too high cost.
Thanks, DP. Thank you for that, for those insights as well. Govind, I'm going to come back to you now, and I'm going to go back to the question around culture, because you raised the issue around Diwali. So my question to you, Govind, is in a country like India, where sweets and desserts are a big part of your culture, how does a company like yours, which is an Indian-based solutions provider, come up with and offer solutions that maintain taste and offer less sugar when consumers may not be really willing to move in that direction? So what is the challenge that you see?
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. I think you mentioned about gulab jamun in Hyderabad. So typically, that's what we do. Try to partner with a lot of shops around the country. So we could, we had run a campaign last year also, from Sandesh in Bengal to Mohantal in North to even Mysore Pa in Tamil Nadu or South, to gulab jamun everywhere. We tried associating with a lot of these vendors who could, we offer solutions to them in terms of replacement of sugar, as well as in terms of replacing the bulk as well. As you rightly said, sugar is also not only sweetening agent, but also adds to the bulk, and also it's one of the class 1 preservatives as well. At a very high, sugar syrup also acts as a preservative. So we try to offer wholesome solutions to a lot of these vendors. We have tied up with a lot of organized and unorganized sector, in providing solutions. We have various offerings in our portfolio. We try to keep the culture intact at many places. Because as you said, in Diwali, I can't do away with sweets. So we try to create this awareness that if not the full, at least half. We have a solution offering. At least do half, reduce the sugar by half. So we ran a campaign from last year. Now at least half. Start somewhere and reduce the calories to at least half. So we have a lot of solutions in offering. We have a powder which could replace entirely the sugar with the bulking agent as well. So, and we also try to do region specific products. Like when sugar tax was levied in some countries like GCC, we actually have a solution specific to that region of removing the empty calories. Can we give a more concentrated product? Reduce the filler itself. Why do I add a filler? So those are the offerings that we give. Basically trying to create awareness. As Millie said, we also supported the FSSAI Eat India movement of reducing sugar. Aaj se thoda kam, like Millie rightly said. So those are the things that we offer, and we have a complete range of offerings.
Thank you very much for that, Govind. So very quickly, then moving on to you, Isha, with all of these reformulation changes that are taking place. What are some of, it's not, you've got to reformulate on the one hand, but there are also key regulatory challenges. What are some of the key regulatory challenges you face in India? And what will you suggest as strategies and actions to mitigate these challenges?
Thank you, Stephen, for that question. So I think we already briefly spoke about this. One of the key regulatory challenges is the negative labeling requirements that are mostly found in India. An example of which would be not recommended for children, right? So that's one of I would say the biggest regulatory obstacles that we face with respect to certain sweeteners in these different product categories. And these restrictions, well, they exist only in India, whereas the other global food standards, they do not have any such label requirements. And I think harmonization of our food standards with the global food standards is perhaps the way forward to address a challenge like that. Another thing that I would like to talk about is, we spoke about, we heard from the other panelists that, sugar not just provides sweetness to the product, it also provides texture and bulking to the product. And if you take the sugar away, it takes away the sweetness as well as the texture of the product. So we've often seen some of our customers who, again, they spoke about using these sweeteners and adding fibers along with them, or adding, hydrocolloids and other and pectins along with them to be able to overcome that. But an advanced technology that consumers or customers are now evaluating is the use of enzymes, particularly in dairy applications, which can actually reduce sugars in the product and at the same time release fiber. So you don't need to add the fiber additionally. From a regulatory point of view, again, these enzymes, while they are approved for use in other parts of the world, we currently do not have regulatory approval to use these enzymes, even while processing these products in India. So I think the next breakthrough that will be required on a regulatory front is also to harmonize our standards with those of the global standards to allow for the use of these advanced technologies, so that there are more innovative ways that can be used to reduce sugar across category and provide additional benefits and provide a positive messaging that okay, this has an added benefit of fiber, or this has an added benefit of improving dental cavities and things like that. So I think there are several ways that we look to the regulatory authorities to work closely with us to make changes in our system so that we can help consumers going forward.
Thank you, Isha. And I think, yes, harmonizing of regulatory standards across Asia, and if you can't get it right across Asia, at least in South Asia, would be a starting point. So I think that's a very important point to raise. Millie, I'm going to give you 3 minutes to answer this question because we are running short of time. As we push and drive towards a healthier lifestyle to reduce calories, if consumer habits, as we've heard from almost everybody, are driven by taste, does getting people to switch to low-calorie options become more challenging? And how do you overcome and mitigate those challenges? So, Millie, I'll give you 3 minutes for that.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Steve, for that question. So I would say, as a food business in offering beverages to consumers, we can't agree more that taste stands out to be a very, very, very important attribute and assumes a lot of importance with respect to acceptance of any product by the consumers. So when it comes to, and if I relate that taste palatability with our reformulation initiatives and journey, I would say that every reformulation in a product is different. It involves a different different series of tools, different R&D efforts, and there is no one-stop solution for that acts for every product matrices. So, and if I state an example, in India, we play in different categories of beverages. And in each of the category, and also very important to say that the brand and the positioning of the product has also a very, very important role to deliver on what reformulation will be relevant for that brand. So having said that, if I state an example, we have options of no-calorie beverages and carbonated categories like Coca-Cola Zero, Thumbs Up Charge Zero, which are typically for refreshment, fun, and it's very important to offer those offerings in a low or no-calorie options. While for other categories like ready-to-serve fruit drinks, we have the option of replacing either part sugar or whole sugar using several tools of low-calorie sweeteners, as well as fortifying with certain micronutrients. Like Minute Maid Nutriforce, we have fortified with iron. Where the sugar is low, you have that micronutrient. In some other beverages, you have it replaced with certain amount of resistant maltodextrin to have that complex carbohydrate. So it really requires a series of R&D efforts to choose those specific tools to identify that which combination will work the best in which kind of beverage or food matrices that you are working on, so that we are able to create a range of solutions which consumers can choose based on their needs and lifestyle. So it's really not a pick and choose or a lift and shift solution. It requires a sincere effort to work on that sweetness profile. Some sweeteners works best in combination, to understand that how the onset of sweetness comes, how the sweetness can be sustained, what is the aftertaste. So all these factors play a very key role to deliver on a very important aspect, which is taste palatability, which stands supreme in the consumer's mind, however healthy the products might be.
Well, absolutely, Miri. And across Asia, that's what we've seen. Even with a recent study in China, taste is certainly the #1 priority for consumers. Now, we have a few questions from the audience, and a couple of the questions are for Dr. Joshi. So I'm going to very quickly, in the interest of, we've got about 10 minutes left in this session. So I'm going to go to Dr. Joshi. There is a question from a member of the audience. Is there any adverse effect of sugar-free on diabetic patients if taking for more than 20 years? I'm assuming the question is there any adverse effect of consuming low non-calorie sweeteners on a diabetic patient if they have been taking this product for more than 20 years? Over to you, Dr. Joshi.
So if taken in the right quantity, if it is aspartame, sugar-free aspartame, I don't think there is any challenge at all. So I feel it is generally recognized as safe. And if a diabetic is taking that product, it is quite okay, even for 20 years. But it has to be taken in the limits which have been prescribed. So you can't make sweets out of that sweetener, but you can definitely have a couple of sachets a day. So as long as it is in the acceptable range and acceptable limit, it is safe.
Thank you, Dr. Joshi. Another question is regarding misdiagnosed diabetes in India. What is your take on that?
Misdiagnosed?
Yeah, if the question says misdiagnosed diabetes in India. So
I think probably the question means diabetes, a lot of type 1 diabetes gets missed and gets labeled as type 2 diabetes and often needs insulin. So that could be one answer to that question, that we need to do better testing. Sorry, you're muted, Steve. I can't hear you.
No, I'm fine. Hang on.
So I think the misdiagnosis, often diabetes gets missed actually, more often than misdiagnosed. And there are 4 types of diabetes everybody needs to know. Number 1 is type 1 diabetes, where you need insulin for life. Number 2 is type 2 diabetes. Number 3 is diabetes in pregnancy called gestational diabetes. And the 4th type of diabetes is secondary diabetes, after a pancreatic surgery, pancreatic cancer, or some drugs which cause diabetes. So it's important to diagnose diabetes correctly. It is important to ensure that if it is type 1 diabetes, you need insulin for life. You can't take oral medicines. And diet and lifestyle is an important part of all diabetics. And except for gestational diabetes, where sweeteners have some challenges, by and large, you can use sweeteners in all other types of diabetes. I don't see any challenges as long as they are taken in acceptable limits and they don't cross the acceptable limits. And I'm sure we have all other domain experts who can give you all the exact limits which are there in public domain. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Joshi. And I think that's a very important point you raise as well about acceptable daily intake limits of sweeteners. And I think there's a role to be played even by industry on educating consumers, but more than educating consumers, educating regulators on the availability of these acceptable daily intake limits for different types of sweeteners. Rebecca, I'm going to come to you with this last question from the audience. And the question is, less sugar products or products with sugar alternatives often state that they are not suitable for children. But kids these days, with the current lifestyles that they lead, where they actually play soccer with their thumbs rather than with their feet, for example, are more prone to increased offtake of sugar and therefore obesity and diabetes. How is the industry going to address and resolve this issue? So, Rebecca, over to you.
Yes, it is important to say that, just to paraphrase Dr. Joshi, these products are safe within the limits and the acceptable daily intake, and the acceptable daily intake is declared per kilogram body weight. And that is done so it takes into account a normal child, healthy child, active child with a proper diet. This is the time when you need to teach children to eat correctly, to appreciate the sweetness in fruits, to have a variety of products in their diet, to drink water by itself. So in this case, for children, it's not advisable because it's not needed. Now, for children that are already at risk or are gaining weight too fast or that are diabetic, then under supervision of the medical doctor, then they can be used as tools. But again, to train them to transition into a better lifestyle, to drink water, to eat fruits and vegetables, better diet and lifestyle. So from my personal standpoint, I think these warnings are not very helpful because they raise questions on the safety. And the question is not on the safety, but on the approach on how to use them as tools for a healthier lifestyle.
Great. Thank you very much for that, Rebecca. Well, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, let me as a moderator thank all my panelists for being part of this session. We have come to the end of the session. We have run short of time. So I would like to thank all of my panelists for your excellent input, for sharing some of your thoughts and ideas. And before we close, I'd like to hand it back now to my good friend Abhinav from FICCI to bring this session to a close. So Abhinav, back to you.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for being the perfect moderator for the session. And you absolutely took us through all the aspects of the session, and the way you moderated the session with the rich experience was very much insightful. And needless to say, we had a very insightful discussion around the topic, and we got to know about the global perspective, Indian perspective, as well as how we can do the regulatory check at our end, the country. Moreover, the need is more to have Aaj Se Thoda Kam approach, as is indicated by Millie, and which is the prime motive, the campaign theme for FSSAI, Aaj Se Thoda Kam. So basically, the idea is to have a good amount of exercise, lifestyle maintenance, and make it more healthy, while at the same time keeping our appetite in handy and watch. With this, even we have a couple of minutes. If any of the panelists want to ask any question with other speaker, we are open to that. I think we have 2 minutes to go. We don't want to take much time, and I think more time should be spent on the Q&A. So if Millie or Dr. Govindarajan or Isha or DP have any question with each, even you can ask each other also. I think we just got one question in the chat box. No. Then thank you so much, Stephen. Thanks you so much, all the speakers. I think there is a lot of deliberation need to be done on this agenda in Indian as concerned, and we have been doing this for past couple of years, and we continue to do so. We'll see and how further engagement can we build up with the FSSAI as well, and more awareness need to be created among the consumer about the positive and the cons of sweeteners. As rightly said by Mr. Govindarajan in between, that the moderation is the key. We can have whatever we want to have, we can have sweet, but the moderation needs to be key. But what Dr. Shashank Joshi said, that the concern for Indians will be the post-tsunami, the tsunami of NCDs because of this COVID. This is a very new perspective. For me, I didn't pay much attention to this, but yes, this is going to be a challenge for not only Indians, and I think across the globe, for all the people. Once we get over the COVID, how we'll take care of this NCD. Having said that, just have things in moderation, just maintain active lifestyle. That should be the key. And with all of you, with all the support, we'll keep engaging with you in our future endeavors, and for your feedback and suggestion to type the agenda together. Thank you so much once again for joining us, and have a very
for all my Indian colleagues and speakers and participants, have a happy and safe Diwali. And thank you so much for joining in. Thanks, DP. Thanks, Dr. Rebecca, for joining in.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
As Stephen said,
Thanks.
do a little exercise
Thank you.
and do some exercise and spend some energy. Have a great day and a safe Diwali.
Happy
Thank
Diwali.
you.
Happy
Same to you.
Diwali
Happy Diwali.
to
Thank
everybody.
you. Happy
Thank
Diwali to
you.
all.
Bye.
Thanks.
Happy Diwali.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye bye.